Hello there, welcome back to another video. Today I'm talking about Fireball Visitors from Darker Worlds by Werner Herzog. It's a documentary he made, it's been released this year. Basically, I'm doing this as the start of a Werner Herzog season, which will go back and look at all of his early films too. So this is just like an introduction. It's going to be a very brief introduction because it is a documentary, and the thing with Werner Herzog documentaries is its experience of watching them. It's really interesting. So there's only so much I can really say about this without ruining it for you. So it's kind of like Caves from Forgotten Worlds. I felt another film I did a video on a few years ago. This time it's about like falling stones, falling bits of debris, fireballs, and everything else. Things that came from other planets and how they affect our civilization in obvious ways, in subtle ways, really. And the thing about Herzog is he's very curious. He's a very curious person, and his documentaries don't need to be the most organised. He doesn't really need to organise them into the most traditional ways. He's just following his nose, and it usually leads to interesting things. So he collaborated in this one with a scientist, and you follow the scientist going around and talking to people, and you see them, the different ways different things come from the sky. I mean, from the more obvious things that come, like when the different landings and different time periods, to a more modern thing where this is like granules. It covers a lot of different areas. So Herzog basically kind of covers the Russian one that came down recently, and there's images of that. Then he talks about the one that came down just after they discovered America, and how that seemed to be significant. He talks about how they, in more ancient times when it was more superstitious, these were viewed as things coming from God. These were signs from God, signifying like something came down just after someone was made important man. That was viewed as a sign, as God giving him his blessing. Now we just know it's just something coming from the sky. But at that time it meant more because there was more belief in God then. So it's about all of that. There's lots of the various beliefs people have, what's tied to what we know as science. There's also the belief of a rocket came down in the Muslim world, and now it's viewed as the centre of one of the great buildings where everyone comes to visit it. It's almost a sign this rock came from God, and no Muslim is allowed in the building. It's viewed as sacrilege if any Muslims into the building, and but a lot of Muslims go there and are almost crowded around it. So it's a sign that these things that come from the sky have emotional importance beyond the reality, at least to someone who's not a believer. Right, but as Herzog's really interested in that and what it signifies and what it's about and what it brings to the world, really. But he also goes to different scientists. Like there's a singer in Iceland, him and his pal were finding granules that went on the roofs of big buildings, and they'd have to. It was almost like going through them and looking for. It's almost like rolling for gold in the last century. We had to try to find these little granules of things that came from the sky, so you can actually investigate them under the microscope. And he's like really interested in that, and they're trying to get data from that because they're just fascinated by it. And this idea that some people are just fascinated with this. There's an emotional attachment to them that it's not quite rational. It's just something that gets their imagination going. It's just an area that gets people's imagination, and people feel that it's worth investigating. And you've also got different things that came down over time. I mean, there was obviously the big asteroid that came and hit the dinosaurs, and they talk a lot about what would happen in the world end and how you'd actually try and stop it. When it basically says you set off nuclear bombs at the side and push its trajectory in a different direction if you find it quick enough. That's how you do it, basically. So I mean, it covers a lot because Herzog in any documentary, he tends to wander a lot, which is the thing I like about them. But he's is the thing, 'cause he's interested in people and people's obsession. He goes to Antarctica and finds, so that's where a lot of the more pure rocks come, because they come down and they're frozen, so you can actually get the pure samples. So he's following a Korean team who are in Antarctica, and he talks about the Antarctica bases, and what they're up to. Like Herzog seems to really like Antarctica. He's done quite a few films with them, you know, with that as a backdrop somewhere. So, and I love that stuff. So I'm really fascinated by it. And the idea of how mankind has something that was 100 years ago would kill you, and now you can build bases there. So there's a lot of this stuff, a lot of the way humanity is actually interpreting these things that come from the sky, how dangerous it can be, but how inspiring it can be as well. And that's what I find fascinating about it. It's a documentary, it's about 20 minutes too long. It's an hour and a half long, but it should have just have been about an hour, I think. I think it would have worked better. I think it kind of loses steam towards the end a little bit, but it's still a very good documentary. It's not my favourite Herzog documentary, but it's a subject matter I really like, and I really like what he did with it. I just felt it was a lot too long, just pacing wise, really. But one I'd highly recommend. It is really good, and it is a fascinating look at a fascinating subject that only Herzog would probably find intriguing. So definitely see it if you can. It is wonderful. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoy the Herzog season when it comes next year, because I'm looking forward to doing it, because I really like Herzog. He's a director who's fascinating. So that's me for now on this subject, and I'll see you soon.